This is Ms. Humbert here, so we're going to kick off our first notes of Try 1, which is Unit 4, Learning Target 7. So we're still going in Unit 4, and we're going to talk about factorating using the x, but now we're also going to talk about doing a greatest common factor instead. So this is all things that you've learned how to do in the past. We're just going to kind of tie them all together, which is a good thing to do at the start of the trimester. So let's take a look at this first one. So let's take a look at those steps. Let's remember those. So first of all, factor out a GCF when possible. That's what we're going to be working on today, is factoring out that GCF. That's our new step. Now here's something I really want to make sure you write down in the note. The setup for the x is only what's left after you factor out the GCF. So it actually makes our factoring easier because the numbers are smaller. Also, we're going to talk about what needs to happen at that GCF by the time you're done factoring. So let's take a look at this. So start taking a look at number 1. So first of all, when I look at number 1, I see 2, 6, and 4. Well, 2, 6, and 4, each one of those are divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide each of those terms by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is just 1, so I'm just going to write that as x squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so I'm going to write that as x, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor using the x, except I'm only going to worry about this right here. This guy right there. Okay, so what I have right now is whenever you take out a GCF, remember you need to write it on the outside. So I like to call the GCF, or the greatest common factor, my little sister. So you go to the mall with your little sister, you can ignore her while you're there, but when you leave the mall, you better make sure your little sister is with you or your mom's going to be really mad. Okay, so we're just going to focus on this part right here. So here we're multiplying to 2 and adding to 3. So what multiplies to 2 and adds to 3? Well, that's going to be 2 and 1. So now I'm going to use this version, and I'm going to use what I found in the x to split up this middle term right here. So I have x squared. Now instead of having 3x, I'm going to have 2x plus 1x plus 2. So here now I am ready to factor by grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So group here, group here. Out of the first group, I can take out an x. Now I'm going to go through the factoring part kind of fast because I'm hoping you remember it from last trimester. X squared divided by x is just x. 2x divided by x is just 2. If you don't, go back and review one of those videos. Out of the second group, I'm going to take out a 1, and then I'm left with x plus 2. So here I notice that my leftovers are matching. So I'm going to go ahead and factor those out. So I have x plus 2. Once I get rid of those, I'm going to write what's left after that. Now here's the biggest, most important thing is I took out a greatest common factor at the beginning of the problem. So I need to make sure that little guy makes it to my answer. So your answer isn't complete until you've completely brought down that greatest common factor. So there's your answer for number 1. Let's take a look at number 2. So for number 2, what we're going to do first is take a look for greatest common factor. Well, between 3, and 18, I can take out a 3. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide each of these terms by 3. 3 divided by 3 cancels out, and then I'm left with x squared. 3 over 3 cancels out, and I'm left with x. And then a negative 18 divided by 3 is going to give me a negative 6. So again, when I go to do my x, I'm just going to focus on this guy, and I'm going to ignore my little sister for a little bit. So we're multiplying to negative 6 and adding to 1. Well, what's going to do that? Positive 3 and negative 2. So now when I go to factor this out, I'm just going to focus on this right here. So my first term stays the same. Now I'm going to split my second term as 3x and 2x. And now I'm ready to factor by grouping. So make our two groups. Between x squared and 3x, I can factor out an x. So I'm dividing each term by x. X squared over x is just x. 3x divided by x is just 3. So next I want to take out a negative 2. So I'm going to divide each of these terms by a negative 2. Okay, remember I knew to take out a negative because the sign between our two groups was negative. So then once I take out a negative 2, I'm going to write that. And then I'm going to write what's left over. Negative 2 over negative 2 is just x. Negative 18 divided by negative 2 is going to be, oh, I'm sorry, this should be negative 6. Okay, so I made a mistake a lot of students commonly make. I worked up at this version. Remember, we're only using this version. And I knew it was a mistake because my leftovers weren't going to match. So here I can take out that x plus 3, and then I'm left with x minus 2. Let's hope I can do a better job on the next one. So first of all, when I look at number 3, I know I have to take out a greatest common factor because we can't factor cubed terms. They need to be squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each of these by x. There's an x in each term, so I can take an x out of each term. So when I divide each term by x, 2x cubed divided by x is going to give me 2x squared. 7x squared divided by x is 7x. And 3x over x is 3. So now I'm just going to focus on this portion, and I'm going to ignore my little sister for a while. So let's take a look at what that would look like. So making my x. So we're going to take 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. So I'm multiplying to 6 and adding to 7. So I'm going to use 6 and 1. So now I'm going to rewrite this equation. I'm going to keep my first term the same. I'm splitting up 7x as 6x and 1x. And then I'm adding 3. So now I'm ready to factor by grouping. So I'm going to make my two groups. Oops, like that. Okay, so between 2x squared and 6x, I can take out a 2 and an x. So I'm dividing each term by 2x. 2 divided by 2 cancels. X squared over x is just x. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and x over x cancels. Out of my second group, I can't take out a GCF, so I'm going to take out a 1 so that I remember that it's there. So here I have x plus 3 as my leftovers. Those are matching, so I'm going to write those out. And once I get rid of those, I'm going to go ahead and write what's left after that, which is 2x plus 1. So this right here is your final answer for number 3. The only thing I'm missing is my GCF. Again, make sure you take that greatest common factor down to the bottom. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So for number 4, I see I have x cubed, 6x squared, and 8x. So I know I can divide an x out of each term. So I'm going to go ahead and take an x out of each term. So then x cubed divided by x squared is x. 6x squared divided by 6x is just 6x. And 8x over x is just 8. So now I want to go ahead and I want to factor by group, or factor using the x, sorry. So let me set up that x. So I'm going to take just these values. So I'm multiplying to 8 and adding to 6. Again, I'm just focusing on this guy right here. So that's going to be 4 and 2. So I'm going to ignore my little sister for a while and just focus on this part. So I'm going to split up that middle term as 4x squared and 2x. And now I'm ready to factor by grouping. So I'm going to make my two groups. Between x squared and 4x, I can divide out an x. And then I'm left with x plus 4. Between 2x and 8, I can divide out a 2, so I'm going to do that, and I'm left with x plus 4. Again, my leftovers are matching. This is a good thing. So I can go ahead and factor those out. And then once I've got rid of those, I'm going to write what's left after that. The last thing I can't forget is that my little sister, my greatest common factor, needs to make it to my final answer. So again, this isn't different than what you guys have been doing. We're just adding one extra step. All right, so let's take a look at number 5. So for number 5, I notice that 6, 14, and 4 are all even. So I can divide each of them by 2. So I'm going to take out a greatest common factor of 2 from each of those. And then I'm left with 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Well, now I'm ready to set up my x and factor. So I'm just going to focus in on this part, ignoring my little sister for a while. Well, 3 times 2 is going to give me 6. So we're multiplying to 6 and adding to 7. Well, to do that, I'm going to need 6 and 1. So now I'm ready to factor by grouping. So I'm going to ignore my little sister for a while, and I'm going to take 7x, and I'm going to split that up as 6x plus 1x. Again, the last two numbers are always going to stay the same. We split up the middle term because now we're ready to factor by grouping. So I'm going to make my two groups. Between 3 and 6, I can divide out a 3, and I can also take an x out of each term. So I'm dividing each term by 3x. 3 over 3 cancels. X squared over x is x. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and x over x cancels out. Between 1x and 2, I can't take out a greatest common factor, so I'm going to take out a 1 just to remind myself that it's there, and I'm left with x plus 2. So now I see that my leftovers are matching, so I can factor those out. Once I factor those out, I'm going to write what's left over, which is 3x plus 1. Last but not least, I want to make sure my little sister makes it down to my final answer. So this right here is my final answer for number 5. Okay, you really want to make sure that greatest common factor makes it to the bottom. Oops, wrong one. All right, so if I can get to that other one, that would be great. So let's take a look at that next one. So I'm taking a look at the next problem on there, and I see that it is not, let me try and stay on the page this time. Okay, there's no GCF for that one. There's nothing I can divide each term by. So if there's no GCF, no problem. We'll just go back to what we've always been doing. So here we're multiplying to 20 and adding to 12. Well, that's going to be 10 and 2. So now I want to factor by grouping. So I'm going to split up that middle term, and instead of having 12x, I'm going to have 10x plus 2x. And now I want to factor by grouping. So I'll make my two groups. Between x squared and 10x, I can take out an x, and then I'm left with x plus 10. Between 2x and 20, I can divide out a 2, and then I'm left with x plus 10. So I notice that my leftovers are matching, so I can factor those out. And then I'm going to write what's left after that. So I have x plus 10 times x plus 2. And that's my final answer for number 6. There's no GCF that I had to worry about for that one. Next, taking a look at number 7, I see that 4, 24, and 20 are divisible by 4. Now I have a lot of students ask me, does it matter if we don't take out the GCF? Always try to take out the GCF because it makes the numbers you have to multiply a lot smaller, so it's easier. So I'm going to divide each of these guys by 4. So when I divide out of 4, I'm left with x squared plus 6x plus 5. So now instead of having to deal with 20 and 24 and 4, I'm only dealing with 6 and 5. That's a lot easier. So I'm multiplying to 5 and adding to 6. Well, that's going to be 5 and 1. So now I'm just going to focus on this part. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to split up that 6x, and I'm going to write it as 5x plus 1x plus 5. And now I'm ready to factor by grouping. So I'm going to make my two groups. Between x squared and 5x, I can divide out an x, and I'm left with x plus 5. Out of the second group, I don't have a GCF, so I'm going to take out a 1 just to remind me that it's there. So I can take x plus 5 out because my leftovers are matching. So I'm going to get rid of those, and then after that, I'm going to write x plus 1. Last but not least, I don't want to forget about my little sister, my greatest common factor, so I'm going to bring that down to the bottom. And whoa! All right, and this right here is your final answer for number 7. Let's take a look quick at that last problem. We might not finish it. I might have you finish it up on your own. So between 3x squared and 5x and 2, there is no greatest common factor. So we just need to set up the x. So we're multiplying to 6 and adding to 5. So what multiplies to 6 and adds to 5? Well, that's going to be 2 and 3. So we have 3x squared. Now I'm going to split up 5x, and I'm going to write it as 2x plus 3x plus 2. So what I would like you guys to do right now is finish this up on your own, factor by grouping, and show me your completed note sheet when you're done. Thanks for listening.